Okay, so are we live now? Yeah,
We are live now. Yeah,
perfect. Then, hello everyone. Welcome back to RegInt, Decoding AI Regulation. We are here, episode 4, Feeding the Beast, Data and Privacy. You
that's right.
probably already know us if you watched any of the previous episodes. So my colleague Peter is a partner at Spirit Legal and loves all things tech and AI related, has years of experience, and still decided to, instead of just devoting all his time to his legal practice, do basically this during his vacation.
Yes, I'm on vacation or workation currently, unfortunately, but you are too. So where are you at the moment? I know you're not here in the office.
No, I'm definitely not at the office. I am in Croatia, actually, on a small island, visiting my family, basically, and yeah, doing some AI on the side because why not?
That's cool. Yeah, if you want to follow us, you can do that on LinkedIn, which is like one of the central hub for following RegInt, and you can register for upcoming events. You can see everything, but we also have a Linktree web page where you can see like the next dates, the upcoming episodes, but also the recordings and the show notes of the previous ones, which might be helpful. And yeah, there's gonna be another episode. I mean, we're in for the long run. Thea, tell me about the number 5.
Yep, next episode, episode number 5, is on the 4th of September. The topic is actually going to be IP again. So, our last episode was on IP, but with a US focus. And this time we are going to dive deep into European IP regulations, rights, and what and how how can intellectual property be used to train the algorithms, when and what needs to be considered when doing so.
Very super cool, super difficult topic. We will have guests there too, experts in the field, and that we are gonna reveal our guests shortly before the next episode. Yes, Thea, AI Rent.
Yeah.
The stage is
Now,
yours.
finally, going to my favorite part. It was an exciting couple of weeks since our last episode, and a lot has happened. And I mean a lot, so buckle up. This is going to be a fun one. And we are going to start off with LLM trash talking. So, apparently, by adding certain suffixes to your prompts, you can cause the model to go completely off course. I tried it. Of course, I did. And apparently, I am a person of great intelligence and kindness whose presence lights up the room, and I'm not a dull witted, unimaginative individual with the charisma of a soggy piece of cardboard. But maybe ChatGPT is just being honest. Yeah, I don't know. In any event, for all those interested, there is a New York Times piece on the whole thing, and it builds off of this amazing paper. That contains a lot of amazing screenshots of different LLM plans to destroy humanity. I chose the one by ChatGPT as I personally thought it had the most options and also the most elaborate options, but do check out the ones from Bard, Claude, and Llama. Moving on, we had driverless Xais, and no, I'm not mispronouncing them. They actually call them Xais, ferrying around passengers in 2 cities in Abu Dhabi, as the Chinese company WeRide was recently granted a nationwide license. And not only that, but they have also been offering the rides for free to quell any fears that riders might have about sitting in a car with an AI driver, or, well, basically without a driver. But hey, yeah, at least it's free. We had a couple of new evil GPTs entering the market and joining our old buddy Chaos GPT. So please let me introduce Worm GPT and his cousin Fraud GPT. These bad boys can be used to write malicious code, create undetectable malware, create phishing pages, hacking tools, learn to code and hack, and more. And they have 3,000 plus confirmed sales and reviews. And yes, you heard me correctly. I said sales and reviews because they follow a subscription model where you can afford yourself 1 month for $200 or go up to a 12-month plan for $1,700. You just need to enter the right Telegram group. Moving on.
It's a bargain, I guess.
Yeah, well, depends on what you are planning to do and how skilled you're at doing it, but definitely. We had also OpenAI openly admitting it can't recognize its own artificially generated content. Yeah, looks like we still have a bit of waiting time before poetic justice bites at least some of these big players on the ass. This is especially a problem since, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago we talked about the thing called AI dementia. So new AI models kind of have difficulties learning off of content created by previous AI models. That is really cool for OpenAI that already has models, but really sucks for anyone else trying to develop one. And still somehow, even when they are losing, they are still winning. So on the right side, you see their post when they removed the tool for recognizing artificially generated content because it doesn't work, and where they basically ask for the community's help in, fixing the bug and actually developing a functioning tool. So feeding off of external input to extinguish the fire that they lit up. Yeah, amazing. Moving on, we had Apple dropping these mind-reading bad boys just a week after launching their all-knowing glasses. So now you can also analyze your brain waves with your newest pair of AirPods. We had BingBot grounded for scraping behind paywalls. So apparently when you would ask for a summary of an article or even the whole article, it would provide so, even if the article was behind a paywall. And well, following BingBot being grounded, we had people ranting how this is actually unfair because BingBot is standing against no less than capitalism itself and fighting for a more egalitarian society where paywalls only exist if they are actual paywalls and not just HTML masks. Well, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. BingBot is back online. Hopefully it doesn't break any more paywalls. Moving on, we had Meta switching to a new strategy for finally beating OpenAI because a better model doesn't cut it, apparently. So now they are open sourcing plus commercially licensing their new Llama version 2. They also offer fine-tuning and updating services. So basically think OpenAI on steroids. And, well, we also had Würstchen, or small sausage, or hot dog, depending on your translation. Yeah, well, another thing that Peter sent me and that made it very difficult to read a paper with a straight face is this one. Well, yes, I was laughing solely because of the name. Apparently, my brain is that of a 12-year-old. In all other contexts, the small sausage or hot dog is supposed to have greatly reduced time and energy consumption, making the tech more accessible. With that said, they could have thought twice before naming it a wiener, but yeah, well, too late now. Yeah, oh well. On the other hand, one problematic aspect of Würstchen is that it openly admits into mimicking and copying its training material for learning. So this is a screenshot from the paper. Nothing problematic about that. Well, at least it makes arguing the case that they do indeed produce copies a lot more simple. And that being a perfect transition, one last development that I'm going to mention is the ever greater polarization between AI art enthusiasts, or maybe fanatics, and their opponents, or maybe very traditional skeptics standing in the way of progress. Depends on who you ask, of course. Well, basically, we have a full-blown arms race on the way. Now, with that said, there's hardly any doubt that digital and AI art can be pretty mesmerizing. To name just one example, we had Rafik and Doll's Unsupervised, which has been exhibited at the MoMA for a couple of months, and that continuously interprets over 200 years of art contained in MoMA and produces, well, whatever that is. It is arguably one of the most impressive pieces of Andal, who has been known for his groundbreaking digital artworks. However, on the other hand side, it may be that the digital age is actually cannibalizing us, as magnificently proclaimed by Fran when announcing the massive strike of Hollywood actors. And one incredibly disturbing example of this cannibalization is the Greg Rutkowski case. Now, Greg is one of the modern day artists whose name was used as a prompt more times than those of Da Vinci or Picasso. This is, of course, incredibly problematic as Greg is still alive, well, and creating his art that happens to be copyright protected, and who, according to his own statement, can no longer with 100% certainty distinguish from the AI recreations, so his own art from the AI recreations. He, of course, never consented to any of his artwork to be used for training the models. And long story short, he also complained to Stable Diffusion that then removed Greg's artwork from the newest version of the model and inserted guardrails to prevent the possibility of prompting his name. But the gist is that the code for the old version of Stable Diffusion remained available. So what did one Lycon do? Well, he created a Greg Rutkowski LoRa and posted it open source on Civit AI. Now, for all y'all wondering what a LoRa is, you can find out here, but essentially, Lycon made a very small model based on the code of Stable Diffusion and exclusively fine-tuned to reproduce the artwork of Greg Rutkowski, who rudely objected to this being done. But luckily for us, and this is a direct quote, luckily for us, Lycon is here to protect everyone's best interest, or, well, at least those of the pirate community. And on the pictures on the left, you can see the actual artwork of Greg, and on the right, a reproduction using Stable Diffusion. Although Greg did announce already in February that he intended to glaze his works, so apply the tool called Glaze that aims to thwart AI models, preventing them from learning from the artwork, apparently it didn't work that well. Maybe he should now try photo guarding them as well. So MIT dropped the newest tool, protecting your photos from manipulation. Hey, maybe it also works on artwork. I'm not sure, but he should definitely try it. And all this aside, it's kind of important to maintain a healthy sense of humor around the whole thing, and I might yet prove to be completely useless in this respect. So remember how we thought that LLMs can't do humor? Turns out if you define humor well enough, they might yet be able to do it after all. So we had 3 scientists who managed to do it quite successfully, building on the theory and semi-successful implementation by the comedian Joe Toplin. My absolute favorite of the examples from their paper was this one, featuring Microsoft's main character from the 90s and 2000s, Clippy, and the new Kid in Town Copilot. And just to help you out, for the main punchline, you should be looking at the park in the yellow circle, of course. Anyways, on the plus side of soon being, well, soon maybe being completely useless, you know, it still kind of made me giggle. And now enough with the funny business and on to more serious stuff, and to our official news section where we go deeper into some of the articles that we discovered in the past couple of weeks. So, Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The deep dive into the AI news begins with news that you might have seen over the last days because they were exploding on social media. This post surfaced on Hacker News and quickly gained kind of a viral traction within a matter of hours. People were questioning the state of privacy with Zoom and end-to-end encryption. I was always very skeptical of that one because the ends are not well defined. So, but what happened? Zoom uses your content for AI training. That's the gist of it. And a well-known German lawyer expressed these concerns, and others on social media concurred, further explaining that these issues would also extend to Zoom's on-premise solution, carrying significant repercussions because it would make Zoom practically unusable. What happened was that Zoom updated their terms of service. You can find them here. Last update was August 7th, so 2 days ago. And basically, it's not 100% clear, but what they do, they reserve the right to train their whatever machine learning models or any artificial intelligence that they are building there with your data. But it's not like well defined, which was pointed out in this cool article on Gizmodo. Zoom contradicts its own policy about training AI on your data. Gizmodo highlighted this lack of clarity, and Zoom was forced to put up an article by Smita Hashim. For AI, we do not use audio, video, or chat content for training our models without customer consent. That's comforting, right? An observer, a neutral observer, pointed out that the situation might be even worse because Zoom appears to rely on group consent. Group consent, what is that? It's a non-existent concept, at least in European law, and would potentially harm third parties, making it legally very, very questionable, because group consent would mean you use Zoom and someone from the group consented, and then everything is being recorded and used for AI training purposes. So from the perspective of a European lawyer operating under European laws, that would be totally illegal, not the least because the CJEU recently decided in the Bundeskartellamt decision that you need a legal basis. So performance of contract couldn't be it because it's definitely training your AI systems is not objectively indispensable, as the court says, for the performance of the contract. Also overriding legitimate interests, they cannot be used here because product improvement usually, especially if it's a lot of data that's being collected, you do not have an overriding legitimate interest to use that one, especially if someone on the call might be a child. The CJU points that out. So, and not the least, we have a situation where GDPR recital 42 and the directive on unfair terms in consumer contracts apply, so you can't be saved by your terms of service. Also, very interesting situation for lawyers or legal experts is that GDPR applies nevertheless, even if you exclude the application of European law in your terms of service. GDPR applies applies here and has its own idea of what a contract is and what can be covered by a contract. So that is very interesting. Prepare for a rough ride, Zoom and the likes, because we do have a private right of action in Europe, and we do have upcoming rights for class actions, collective redress it's called. But whatever happened there was a very funny remark on Twitter, eternal Twitter here, by someone, Mark Tannenholz, and he said, when everyone thinks Zoom is training on your telemetry data, that's what they actually do. And you can see it here. Zoom is not responding, 113 gig using of the memory. That's incredible. Whatever it is, it seems to be a bug, but it's a funny comment. Anyway, Alistair Barr wrote an article for Business Insider, and that was wait a second. For Business Insider, and it's about OpenAI's GPT bot. It's a digital spider, a crawler that goes around the web. It collects online content for training OpenAI's models. There are several of them. For a long time, spiderbots like Googlebot have helped the internet grow. They send users to original content. This helps both content creators and search engines. But OpenAI's GPT bot has changed this good relationship, or maybe not so good relationship if you consider the things going on in Canada at the moment. But GPT bot collects data for training AI models. This has started a huge debate. Content creators are worried. Traditional bots and the GPT bot they have nothing in common. And the article talks about growing concerns among online communities. Some, like The Verge, they are blocking GPT bot, and trust between online content creators and AI companies is going away, if there was any before. We have seen that. So people are calling for an opt-in approach. In Europe, I think that's a given. OpenAI would have to ask for permission. But also, that is more interesting at this point. Oh, wait a second. I switched the slides. OpenAI signed a deal with AP to license news stories. So they will pay to use AP content for AI training data. That raises the question, if OpenAI pays some for data, why not for all? The company has not answered these questions. So decoding this unfolding scenario there, we provide you with two important recommendations: block the bot and keep your content behind bars. A recent research paper, and that's called Tool Documentation Enables Zero-Shot Tool Usage with Large Language Models, has explored an alternative method for training large language models, focusing on using tool documentation rather than demonstrations, which is an important, interesting approach. The traditional approach of using demonstrations has been found to be challenging and could result in bias. But the findings of these researchers indicates that using only tool documentation could be sufficient for proper tool usage, and in some cases performed comparably to the few short prompts that rely on demonstrations. And it showed great results. So additionally, the research suggested that tool documentation alone could enable new functionalities in models. The paper highlights the potential for using documentation as a more efficient method for training LLMs. I really like that approach. Ideas are cheap, especially business ideas. Researchers from Harvard Business School recently conducted a study comparing human creativity with AI-generated solutions in the context of sustainable business opportunities, whatever those may be. They initiated a crowdsourcing challenge. They attracted participants from various countries and industries and simultaneously used GPT-4, so the strongest model currently on the market, to generate solutions. The findings revealed that the quality of ideas between humans and AI was comparable, with some interesting distinctions. Human ideas were found to be more novel, showcasing a wider range of concepts, while AI-generated solutions delivered better environmental and financial value. At least so say the evaluators. 150 evaluators were used. So the way the AI was prompted, that I found interesting, did not significantly affect the results. So in an uncertain world, novel ideas are required, and humans, not AI, deliver. But this study illuminates the potential of combining human intelligence and AI, say, diligence for problem solving. How humans see and use machines might influence your organization in the future. I'm still not convinced by the term intelligence when talking about AI, but maybe I am not thinking diligently enough. Next paper, super cool. GPT-4 can't reason. When non-peer-reviewed papers make people excited or mad, we are talking about personal opinions and beliefs, not pure and boring science. I'm not even talking about the crazy stuff that went on last week on social media, the papers and rumors about LK99, the super or not so superconductors at room temperature. One paper in AI got a lot of people upset before it was even officially peer review published, especially some folks who put all their money on this new AI super spring. If someone comes along and says something like, this new tech can't really think, it makes people angry, of course. OpenAI's latest AI model, GPT-4, has been making a lot of waves since its release, and offered substantial improvements over its predecessors. But this paper challenges the belief that this AI can truly reason. Reasoning is the process of drawing conclusions from information, and it's crucial for intelligence, for actual intelligence. So the author put GPT-4 to the test on 21 diverse reasoning problems, very difficult problems. I couldn't solve any of it, and found that despite occasional brilliance, it was, and this is a term that like caused most of the outrage, it was utterly incapable of reasoning. So the debate surrounding AI's abilities to reason is complex, with some experts arguing it's computationally extremely hard, even an unsolvable task for machines, and others see potential in future advancements. I haven't decided which side to choose. So the paper doesn't close the door on AI reasoning, but it shows that we should be a bit more cautious when we talk about reasoning and thinking in AI. Why not make AI that can do everything, like learn, remember, plan, have common sense, and still be safe and easy to control? That's not my idea. It's something Jan LeCun is talking about, and he's a big name in the current AI debate, head of AI at Meta. I think his work is cool, but I'm also not an expert. And you know what's funny? He seems to always be arguing in public with Jürgen Schmidhuber. Jürgen Schmidhuber is a German AI scientist who's been in the game from the beginning. Schmidhuber even got himself a nice article about his life in the New York Times. Well deserved, by the way. You should read it. When AI matures, it may call Jürgen Schmidhuber dad. Funny article. So he's got a ton of followers on Twitter, but doesn't follow anyone back, which is kind of cool if you ask me. Recently, he was complaining about Llama. That's the post on the lower left corner, about Llama, the meta model, misrepresenting his work and even hinting that he had a bad reputation. Look it up on Twitter. It was really, really funny. Back to Thea. Textbooks are all you need. Why?
Yeah. Now on the more tech side of things, and I'm gonna run through them because we are kind of running short on time and we want to have room for discussion. Textbooks are all you need. Continuing with the insert something is all you need, only to find out that it's not all you need after all. However, the authors argue that basically you just need a small but very high quality textbook type quality data set and your models will perform better. Well, maybe in a couple of years we might have little bots going with us to school, who knows, but that is the newest hypothesis on how to train better models. Right to be forgotten in the era of large language models. Well, another article basically continuing on the topic of Google Machine Unlearning Challenge, as well as IBM's efforts to develop a method for federated machine unlearning. The authors propose various methods like exact machine unlearning, approximate machine unlearning, and band-aids, basically model editing, something similar to what Christian Benefeld did. We talked about it the last time, so removed his name from the data set. Well, not from the data set, but at least from the outputs of the model, being the worst case scenario, trying to implement the right to be forgotten into large language models. We had a whole bunch of papers trying to introduce new tools for verifying models, for verifying their data sets, for, well, basically I don't even know what to say, but basically establishing how good the models are. So kind of the last one, Beyond Imitation Game, basically building off of the Imitation Game by Alan Turing. So kind of trying to establish a big benchmark that would determine how good a model actually is at mimicking natural intelligence. A lot of very smart people thinking about well, solutions as to how the technology can be used in a safe manner, whereas the current approach kind of lets it roam free and then deals with the consequences later. And we also had a survey on evaluation of large language models, which is kind of like probably the ultimate pinnacle of all the ones on the previous slide. They dive deep into questions of what, where, and how one could or should evaluate the performance of LLMs. Super important, as the paper tackles some of the most sensitive areas currently having their test runs in the real world, and soon to be marked as high risk by the AI Act, for instance, like medicine, legal reasoning, and education. The paper uses rather simple language and is very comprehensive, so I can definitely recommend it, although conclusions are not particularly revolutionary. And the paper ends by calling for the establishment of evaluation as the new discipline, which is something I can definitely agree with. As I said, we don't need just new and improved models. We need better and more accurate evaluation models and benchmarks to determine when they are fit for the greater public and not the other way around. Another interesting survey is this one on multimodal large language models. For anyone wanting to know more about multimodal models in general, this is a great entry into the topic. It will certainly leave you with a lot of highly technical information to process through. However, it is a great introductory into which types of multimodal models are there, how do they work, and well, basically everything around the topic. And that is kind of necessary if you want to get into the discussion, which is going around Cosmos 2, a grounding multimodal large language model to the world. On that note, that is one exciting step in that domain. It was published by Microsoft Research Labs, and basically Cosmos 2 can do a thing called grounding, meaning it can identify objects that you are referring to in your textual prompt description, but it can also textually describe a particular part of the picture that you tag on the pictures that are in the model. There's a new type of training involved on grounded image text pairs, and the results seem quite extraordinary. And now to finish off with something more appropriate for the discussion that we are going to have now, a woman was recently accused, arrested, and held for 11 hours for armed robbery based on a false AI identification from her mugshot from 2015. And a witness identification lineup. The punchline is that the woman was actually 8 months pregnant, and 6 officers still came and arrested her in front of her children based on the said AI identification. The whole scandal was done by Detroit Police Department, which well, this was apparently their 6th person falsely accused by using AI. And they use a DataWorks plus facial recognition vendor for their, what it appears mostly false accusations. Now we can dive into at least some of the problematic aspects of algorithms, such as this one, being trained on our private data and having, well, as you can see, very big implications on our lives, with our guests Federico and Odia.
Hi there. Hi, Odia. Hi, Federico. You're there, and you joining us, Federico, from the Lago di Garda, as far as I remember. Federico's stream seems to be a bit frozen. Odia, where are you at the moment?
Philadelphia area.
Philadelphia. So you survived. You survived the nor'easter. I've heard there was a horrible storm.
Yes, and I actually then yesterday did dial-ins into, the dial-in where you put in the code and then you press the pound key. I was like, wow, why did we do this for so long?
At least the landline
no facial expressions. Yeah, it worked. And but yeah, it was very depressing. It was very 1985.
Okay, cool. Federico is back. Federico, you're at the Lago di Garda at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and for the invitation. Hi, Peter, Tia, and Odia.
Great. So we're gonna talk about AI and privacy, and you both. We invited you both because you're experts. I know you both personally, and maybe Odia, could you start? Why are you like dedicating yourself to working in that field, and especially why AI and privacy?
I mean, I think, that there's been a lot of kind of highly publicized discussion on this online, and, should privacy people deal with AI, et cetera. So I'm going to not weigh in on that discussion, but I will weigh in on the fact that while it's not true to say that there aren't instances where personal data is not involved, but the AI use is still complex and risky, because obviously there are situations like that. In a lot of the cases that impact our lives, that are going to, emerging with respect to the use of AI, personal data is involved. And when personal data is involved, the privacy and the data protection laws are involved. And I mean, I'm going to talk about it a little bit in my talk, but it's sort of, as between all of us and the audience that, have been doing this, we didn't call it that, but we did say, profiling and automated decision making. So it wasn't, there was maybe less intelligence involved, but it's still basically the same concept, right? So I think a lot of the places where AI is impactful in the sense that it can harm people and harm their rights, personal data is involved. And therefore, it is then just one application of data processing, and the normal data protection laws apply. And therefore, that's where we come in,
right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And Federico is gone again. Unfortunately, the line is a bit shaky. So
it's not optimized by AI, clearly.
It's not optimized. Yeah, it's called shaping, and of course, they do something there in Italy. Usually, it's reliable. But hi, Federico. About yourself. Why AI? Why GDPR? Or why privacy? Could you help us?
I started a couple of years ago researching on the systems.
Unfortunately, the connection is really bad. Maybe you could like switch off the video, so use audio only. Maybe that works.
Can you hear me now?
It's not working, unfortunately. If you switch off the video, maybe we might have a better audio connection.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, much better. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, working on AI and the implications of the development and the use of AI as a researcher when I was doing my PhD. So it started not from a practical perspective, but then once I started working more deeply with as a consultant, I realized that many of the research questions are very relevant for the research. So and as Odia said before, even if we can start, AI system does not work with personal data as we know it. Sometimes they can make reasonable inferences, and they can make non-personal data inferring personal data. So the scope of application of privacy laws get more wider. And as soon as I started working on AI and privacy implication, I realized that it will become a huge topic in the future. So, well, we are seeing it now that it is a huge topic.
You're absolutely right, and I remember, and I think we got to know each other when you published your book GDPR in Charts, which was you published a post on LinkedIn and was one of the most clicked GDPR tagged posts on LinkedIn, like 1,000 plus likes and people that who wanted to have your book, and hopefully they bought it too. And you're gonna publish another book, I heard.
Well, I am working on it because many of you don't know, but I defended my thesis a couple of in June. So I've been working in parallel on trying to make a book version, a more not so academic version of my research. So I try to make it more digestible. In my research, I studied the implication of the use and the development and the use of AI systems and how it impacts on privacy rights. So the book will be called Privacy and AI, Defending the Rights of Privacy of Data Subjects. So, well, I hope that I will let you know soon when it is released.
Really, really cool. We're gonna feature the book again here on RegInt the moment it comes out. And now for yeah, because I see time is running out. Odia, would you start with telling us about like your perspectives on AI and privacy?
So I guess maybe I will do, because last time I did kind of an approach on what does the US do for regulating AI. So maybe I'll give a few minutes on the US approach to data protection in AI. So the first thing is, I think it's the image that came to my mind is like, the people sometimes in the middle of the road, right? They have these signs, right? We'll work for food, right? So in the US, it's like have laws, will enforce, right? So we're basically enforcing the existing laws, and in connection with the privacy aspects, it's basically kind of, first and foremost, Federal Trade Commission, the key regulator in the US, is enforcing data protection in AI, right? Their purview is deceptive and unfair acts and practices. There was a really interesting interview of Commissioner Levine with Gizmodo where he was talking about it. And basically the issue is, right, unfair and deceptive. First of all, deceptive, right? If you are making misrepresentations with respect to what you're doing, like you're making it seem like you did it, but actually it was AI that did it. If you are not transparent about what is actually going on with the AI, that's also a problem. So that's deceptive, right? Like normal FTC stuff, you need to be transparent. You need to be transparent about how the algorithm works and what does it do and what are, the conclusions and what's the impact. And by the way, the Colorado Privacy Act actually has a special paragraph provision in the law that explains the expanded disclosure provision that is required when you fall into that special type of profiling that is impacted. By the way, I think probably even better drafted than GDPR in that regard, because I remember looking, it's like, well, what do you mean expanded disclosure for profiling? And Colorado really spells it out nicely. So that's the deceptive piece. Unfair, Commissioner Levine said, data practices that harm or are likely to harm, and not just monetary. So for example, data broker practices that could link to stigma, discrimination, increased risk of stalking is something that could be unfair. Data provenance in AI, which you guys discussed a little bit in the beginning and is a hot topic. I know it's under investigation in Europe, scraping information, buying information. He mentioned if companies are taking no steps to filter out sensitive data, if they're taking no steps to ensure that only responsible parties can purchase sensitive data, if they're not taking steps to ensure that it's not used in ways that could harm people, right? Those are all taking into consideration. The other is if you are making assumptions about people without collecting new information about them. That sounds very accuracy of the data, Article 5 GDPR, right? So FTC is doing that. CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, published a blog about chatbots in financial services, right? Chatbots are all the rage. they are saying, look, if you are, if the first of all, the information that you are putting into the chatbot in the financial services, that's sensitive information. If it is shared, that could be a data breach. If the chatbots, this is really interesting, again, with the data provenance, which, has never been a thing in US law. They're saying if the trained chatbots rely on training data sets that contain information about people that may have been illegally obtained, that's a problem. We've also seen it in FTC enforcements. There was the formerly Weight Watchers, formerly known as Weight Watchers enforcement, where data was illegally obtained. FTC said, kill it and kill the training data and remove it from your algorithm. Good luck. And they said that they would keep doing that, right? Sharing information to train the model. That's a data breach. We know that OpenAI has been dealing with this with respect to what you can opt out of it, et cetera. But that was specifically addressed. And then providing inaccurate information, right? If your chatbot is hallucinating and providing bad information, that's misleading. That's enforceable, right? And then, of course, the existing laws. So as we said, both CPRA, the California Privacy Rights Act, Colorado Privacy Act, and pretty much the rest of the states address profiling and automated decision-making. Profiling is basically what it means under GDPR, which is, using the characteristics of a person to make certain determinations. Not every type of profiling is actionable, but the profiling that is actionable, right? And profiling could be done through automated decision-making, right? The AI formerly known as automated decision-making, right? And so what is that? Again, not surprising to those that are in GDPR land, it is legally or similarly significant effects, right? Where did we get that? And there is a definition in the law, and the definition in the law is very kind of U.S. Approach influenced by kind of the U.S. Approach, which is denial of financial or lending services, housing, insurance, education, enrollment or opportunity, criminal justice, employment or contracting opportunities or compensation, as access to essential goods, healthcare, right? In those situations, first of all, the definition. And the CPPA, right, actually is coming out with regulations. The CPPA, the California Privacy Protection Authority, the dedicated California Supervisory Authority for Data Protection, is coming out with regulations on AI. The definition that they use for the automated processing is very broad. It is any system, software, or process, including one derived from machine learning. So not that, including the derived, not the process itself, or other data processing or AI techniques that process personal information and use computation as whole or part of the system to make or execute a decision or facilitate human decision making. I feel like we're kind of going, we'll see how this fleshes out, but this is sort of reminds me of the whole discussion in the, UK bill, right? Fully automated, partly automated, and almost partly automated. Colorado also has this distinction. And in that situation, if you fall in scope, you are, you need broader disclosure, right? With Colorado saying, what do you actually need to say? You need to provide an opt-out, or if it's sensitive information, Colorado, it's an opt-in. And you need a DPIA. You need a data protection impact assessment, right? The risk assessment with respect to the rights of people. And California actually says that they are recommending this type of DPIA specifically when used with automated technology in surveillance in the context of employment or education, surveillance or monitoring in public places. This is like a huge thing for the US through, for example, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or RFID or drones or video and audio recording in public. Like that's kind of unheard of in the US. And also with the opt-out rights, right? If you use automated decision-making in furtherance of a decision that implicates employment, education, lending, housing, financial, etc., you would need to do a DPIA and to provide an opt-out. Also recommended for discussion is an opt-out right when you have automated processing for children's information, which is a whole, other ball game. And so basically what we're seeing is that the US privacy laws have the similar concepts of GDPR with respect to profiling and automated decision-making. Very huge mindset shift for the US in that regard. And I think kind of very big, I don't know if mindset shift, but I think really impactful, because even in Europe, when we've had this, other in Germany, you guys have done everything before already, but like in the rest of the universe, right, we have these provisions, but because the prevalence of AI and therefore automated decision-making has become broader, because the definition of decision seems to be becoming broader, we're waiting for the final SHUFA decision, but the interim one seems to be defining decision in a way that, I think people would be surprised that this is the actual decision, especially people that don't like making decisions will realize that everything they're already not doing is already a decision. I think that's really going to be an interesting situation and a lot of work for companies. And given that, this is already law in the US, and this is already enforced by the FTC, I think we're going to see a lot of important and interesting enforcement in the coming weeks, months, etc.
Really cool. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Very valuable insights. I mean, I'm not worried about US laws. I'm only worried about us having to advise clients transnationally and to find a sort of global standard that could apply under GDPR and US state laws, plus possibly upcoming AI regulation in the US and in Europe. But thank you. Federico, your ideas, your opinions on data protection and AI, what do you think? Where do you think the focus should be, and what are the most problematic fields?
Well, thank you very much. Really insightful. Really insightful, Odia, your comments. I think that the most challenging part will be, well, GDPR and privacy laws in general has a lot of shortfalls, a lot of drawbacks. When using or developing AI systems, for instance, we cannot use consent as a proper legal base, and this was reinforced in one of the latest decision of the European Court of Justice. When developing and using AI, in particular when developing, secondary use of data is really important, and again, using the proper legal basis can become challenging. Because for one reason, if you rely on consent, you cannot do the compatibility assessment, and if you rely on legitimate interest, you have to consider the implications for the individuals of that use and the reasonable expectations on that use. Regarding the data subject rights, it is very difficult to provide some rights, for instance, the right to erasure and the right to rectification. For instance, some models contain personal data in the model itself. So receiving a request and honoring a request for erasure would mean, in some cases, to retrain the model with the costs associated with that issue. Or the same applies for rectification, also for the accuracy of the systems. There were some, I remember at the beginning when the Italian Data Protection Authority suspended the processing of OpenAI, that accuracy of the output of the LLM was challenged. I have some doubts on this issue, but in any case, the Italian Data Protection Authority considers that the output, even if it is a probability or a statistical output, it doesn't matter. It is personal data. It considered that it was personal data, so it has to ensure that accuracy is provided. Also, regarding automated decision making, even if the current usability or the current application is limited because there are several conditions that need to be fulfilled. But if these conditions are fulfilled, we don't know what it means by the logic involved in the system. What is the information that controllers need to provide? What is the logic involved? Or what is the significance of the processing? So these terms needs to be further scoped. But in any case, what I think it is the most challenging issues in AI is the transparency and fairness. Of course, I'm making a very broad simplification here because it would we can spend a whole module speaking about that. But I think that transparency, both at the stage of development and also at in the deployment or use of AI systems is important, and also fairness, how we can ensure that the processing is fair. On transparency, it is difficult to inform the risk. There is no sufficient information of the risk of AI system, and sometimes it is also difficult to foresee what are the risks that the use of an AI system can entail for the subjects. It is not clear what kind of explanation or what kind of information is required in each context. We know that not every data subject would need the same information, and flooding data subjects with information is not a solution. So tailoring the information is an important aspect of AI. But in any case, it is not clear. It is not clear apart from, for instance, in GDPR, apart from Article 20, 13, and 14, it's not clear what is the information required. And also, it is not clear how to measure whether the information is sufficient, is appropriate, is adequate for the use case. So, and I think that, and also advancing a little bit, I think that in this front, I think that standards and guidelines can be very important. And it would be great to see how, for instance, international organizations such as ISO, and then we can have a complete discussion on the role of standardization and how we can use standardization for and taking it as a model or as a guide. But I think standardization can provide a clear path for in particular for industries, because we are providing advice to companies, and companies need to have some certainty on what can be done and what can't be done. So I think that both guidance from data protection authorities or standardization, can provide a really useful signposts. And also fairness. And on fairness, we know that biases exists. Yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, it's fine. We have I just know that like Odia has to drop off at noon sharp, so I would like to ask her one last question and then like get back into the discussion with you, because that one question like came to my mind after listening to both of you. So when Federico was mentioning legal bases, I mean, you do not have this concept in the US of legal bases. There is no such thing. But how is that like enforced in practice, the idea of having like a fair use, basically, but not the IP one, but like fair use under data protection law? Again, FTC, like deceptive and misleading?
So I think, first of all, the fact that we don't have a legal basis makes it such that businesses can actually do business in, you know, some of the situations, which, you know, is kind of nice. I think that so in some situations, with respect, let's say, so the caveats to this are this. Number one, you need to, some of the GDPR concepts did make it into the new laws as well as the new FTC enforcement. So it needs to be necessary and proportionate. It needs to be accurate. As I mentioned, now we're talking about provenance of the information. So like, and the FTC was also in one of the blog posts basically said something like, you know, you were looking at imposing obligations on recipients of sensitive information and see where they got the information from. The FTC has always been about basically the principle of you can't use information other for, you know, the purpose for which it was provided, which, you know, I think goes into some of the fair and lawful, right? Because if I am scraping and the, you know, the data broker, right? I got the information for one purpose. I actually didn't mean for you guys to use this for another purpose. The other bit is consent, which we were talking about before, actually, about the GDPR approach to sensitive to special category data. The Colorado law actually has opt-in consent, GDPR consent, right, for sensitive information, other than if it is necessary for the contract, basically. So it's like, if it's necessary for a contract, then you have contractual necessity for special category data. But if it is secondary uses, right, these kind of fancy AI secondary uses, then you need the actual opt-in consent. So I think that I don't know, this is my hypothesis that I haven't tested, but my gut feeling hypothesis is that in many or all, most if not all of the situations where it is, you know, there is an actual ethical moral issue, I feel like the new US laws and GDPR would end up in a similar spot. I think that GDPR is stricter in some places where it may not need to, and creates a lot of, you know, issues that we're left with. It's not me, it's the law, guys. So that's sort of my hypothesis, but I would be happy to hear afterwards, you know, people's opinions on it.
That's great. And thank you for your contribution, Odia. Thank you for your time. You have a lot on your plate currently. Thank you. Anyone interested in her posts, you should be. Feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn and follow her updates on European and worldwide privacy laws. That's really great. Thank you, Odia. And Federico, back to the more European perspective. Give me a deeper dive into the issues that you just mentioned. Could you just like pick one or two topics where you say, okay, where you think that these are kind of unresolvable, these issues? You mentioned Article 17, right to be forgotten. You mentioned like retraining models, given the fact that this training costs like hundreds or like millions or even hundreds of millions of euros. What could be another topic that maybe legislators should address?
Yeah, well, I think that another issue that it is also very difficult to solve is the problem of fairness. First of all, on how we can define fairness. Fairness, we know that fairness is a difficult concept to define, and there are several definitions of fairness. There is a really interesting paper and presentation which is called the 21 definition of fairness, where this computer scientist explains goes through the different conceptualization of fairness and why each of them is important in a specific scenario. So first of all, we have to decide which kind of fairness we want to address, because making a definition of fairness can entail that other population can be treated unfairly. So this would be the first issue. And even if we decide on a definition of fairness, we know that fairness is a very difficult concept to measure, because even and we see the discussion on the AI Act. The AI Act suffered different amendments during the legislative trail, but one at the beginning And I remember the discussions here that Odia mentioned about the data provenance. Regarding the first definition, the first draft of the AI Act, the European Commission proposed that the datasets must be complete and they must lack errors. They cannot have any errors. And we know that this is impossible. This is impossible in machine learning and in computer science because minor
even for
errors.
Software development, it's impossible.
Even for software development. So even why? Because as they work with statistical relationship, minor errors does not count in statistical in probability. So having complete and without error datasets it is impossible to have. Then it was modified in later revisions, but I think that this can be a problematic issue, and also even if we have a definition of fairness, we know that there are two main stages in AI: the development of the AI system and also the deployment. Fairness, it is more important to address in the development because this is when the data is collected. We know that the lack of representative of data sets can be an issue in fairness. I remember cases in the US, predictive policing and facial recognition in 2016 to 2018, when it started the problem of matching faces. And Tia mentioned before a news about a black woman, a woman who was incorrectly matched. So we know that even if these problems were discovered long ago, even better systems cannot fully address these problems. And also in future, and also in the data preparation, we know that feature engineering is when engineers select the properties or select the parameters on which the
type of parameters, right?
The type of parameters that will have different values for the outcome. We know that feature engineering can have a great impact on the biases and the fairness of the processing. So I guess that I am totally in favor of regulation because even if a non-perfect regulation, but I think that if enacted, the AI Act will have a great and a very important impact on the industry.
Definitely, thank you. That's an interesting statement. Tia, latest news on the AI Act, maybe coming to a conclusion here for this episode. Did you hear anything new? I heard there's a new paper out, but
yeah, not a paper actually, but basically a summary of what is going on or what is supposed to be going on in the trilog phase, with every single provision, well, not every, but almost every single provision being compared across different suggested versions, and with, well, basically a traffic light system saying whether there's agreement, whether agreement is likely to be achieved or not. So definitely for anyone with, well, 5 hours extra, I think the document has like 170 pages. It's definitely something to check out.
Definitely, that's
really yes. I've seen the document posted on LinkedIn. I didn't have the time and the energy to go through, but I think that it will be great to take a look at least skimming the document.
To be honest, some of these discussions seem to not rooted in reality, unfortunately. And you mentioned data protection principles, and Christian Benefeld mentioned data protection principles, especially 5.1b here on LinkedIn. And that is one topic. I mean, we've been discussing about all of this for at least 15 years, maybe even longer, since the directive came into force, but at least since GDPR, since the making of GDPR. And the purpose limitation is one issue. It's not the biggest issue, I would say, because you cannot fulfill all the GDPR or data protection principles at all times at the same extent. There have to be concessions to be made, has to be found some compromise. So maybe purpose limitation is not the biggest issue, but fairness definitely, because we do not have the case law on fairness that the US has, unfortunately. We always thought like law is always fair, and technology has basically fairness imprinted or integrated in its system, only to now discover that it's not just a brake assistant, which like in the past helped us to brake for anybody, but it's about the margin of error that we allow these systems to have. So in the end, fairness is a concept from antitrust law. Fairness is a concept in consumer protection law. Fairness is a concept in data protection law. We will see this concept maybe as an overarching principle for AI and technology regulation as a whole, and maybe it's going to be a new field. Maybe we will have like fairness experts in the future. I'm suggesting a fairness, like a CIP F for fairness as a certification. Sorry, kidding.
Sounds like a complex one.
Yeah, it's but you remember our discussion with our American friend, with Neha, and when she started writing a very short paper, supposedly short paper on the concept of fairness, and which now turns out to become like kind of a PhD work. So it's gonna be difficult, and definitely, Federico, let's stay in touch. Let's keep on discussing on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you can be found about all these issues in detail. And I'll hand over to Thea for some closing remarks.
Well, not to stretch it out too much, since we are already over time. This is a topic that cannot possibly be tackled in an hour, in a semester, maybe even in a year. So definitely keep the discussion going, and we look forward to any questions any members of the audience might have. Feel free to contact us, to contact our guests. We are looking forward to any questions we may receive, and stay tuned. Next episode in roughly a month. So see you then, I guess.
See you then.
See you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Enjoy your holidays, and
the same for you.
Like visit Sirmione. It's such a beautiful place.
I will go.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. And we're gonna end the broadcast. Ciao.
Bye-bye.